Welcome back to Ethical Point. I'm your mentor, and I'm sitting down with our resident skeptic today for a seriously high-yield explainer. We are tackling an absolute beast of a dilemma, straight from the 2024 UPSC General Studies Paper 4. We're looking at what is essentially the ultimate administrative tightrope, right? Balancing human development with outright ecological survival.
Thanks, mentor. And honestly, just looking at the news lately, this isn't even just an exam question anymore. It's kind of the defining crisis of our entire generation. Like, how on earth is a civil servant supposed to balance the immediate, pressing economic needs of the public with the long-term survival of the actual planet?
It's a huge challenge, so here's our roadmap for this explainer. We'll kick things off with Section 1, Decoding the Ethics Crisis. Then we'll move into 2, Rethinking Metrics in Development, and 3, Core Environmental Ethics Defined. After that, we're zooming out to 4, Global Policies and Commons, mapping out 5, Exploitation versus Ecological Equilibrium, and then we'll wrap the whole thing up with 6, a really concrete UPSC Mains answer strategy.
Perfect. Love a highly organized plan. Let's dive right in.
All right, Section 1, Decoding the Ethics Crisis.
To truly get the administrative challenge here, we have to look directly at what aspirants actually faced in the examination hall.
Skeptic. Yeah, and the examiners really didn't pull any punches this year, did they? They went straight for the philosophical jugular. The prompt literally says, global warming and climate change are the outcomes of human greed in the name of development, indicating the direction in which extinction of organisms, including human beings, is heading towards loss of life on Earth. How do you put an end to this to protect life and bring equilibrium between the society and the environment? I mean, wow, they are explicitly framing development as a product of human greed that leads to loss of life. As an administrator sitting in that chair, how do you even begin to answer that without sounding totally anti-development?
See, that's exactly the trap, skeptic. The prompt is only partly true. The core issue isn't actually development itself. Which brings us to Section 2, Rethinking Metrics and Development. This whole crisis, it's largely an illusion created by how we currently measure success. We don't need to stop developing. We just need a massive structural and ethical overhaul of our economic pillars. The real issue is our completely flawed scorecard. Right now, we rely heavily on GDP, gross domestic product. In simple layman's terms, GDP basically only measures short-term economic accumulation. So if you cut down an entire forest to build a factory, well, GDP goes up.
Right, but the lungs of the planet just got way smaller, and the GDP doesn't account for that massive loss at all.
Exactly, hit the nail on the head. That's why we have to move beyond just GDP to metrics like the Genuine Progress Indicator, or GPI, and Gross National Happiness, GNH. These metrics actually subtract environmental damage and social costs from those economic gains. They literally force governments to place an actual economic value on our biocapacity. It completely changes the definition of progress overnight. Okay, so changing the metrics makes a lot of sense. But practically speaking, out in the real world, our industries currently operate on what's basically a take, make, dispose model. You buy a phone, it breaks in 2 years, you throw it away, and you just buy another one. That's a linear economy. Is a zero-waste circular economy actually a possible thing in the real world?
It absolutely has to be. Let me just give you a layman's definition of a circular economy. Think of it as mimicking nature's waste-free cycle. In nature, there's no garbage, right? A fallen leaf just becomes fertilizer for the next tree. A circular economy takes that concept and applies it to industry through extreme longevity, repairability, and total recycling. We are talking about keeping resources locked in a closed loop instead of just dumping them into a landfill. And we're already seeing this happen. Just look at Japan's super strict recycling laws for electronics, or the EU's Circular Economy Action Plan that's pushing hard for right-to-repair mandates.
Let's move to Section 3, Core Environmental Ethics Defined. Because before we can even draft those circular economy policies, we need to ground these actions in formal ethical theory for GS Paper 4. First up is ecocentrism. Now, for centuries, our development has been anthropocentric, meaning totally human-centric. We viewed ourselves as the absolute masters of nature, treating the Earth like it's just our personal resource bin.
And ecocentrism basically flips that entire script.
Precisely. Ecocentrism is the psychological and ethical shift toward ecological stewardship. It's the recognition that all life, human and non-human, holds intrinsic value. And hey, quick exam tip for everyone listening. This is an absolutely brilliant concept to drop right into the introduction of your mains answer. Okay, I totally get the philosophy, mentor, but how do I actually apply ecocentrism as an administrator? I mean, I can't exactly just walk up to a massive mining company and say, hey, be a better steward.
No, you can't. But you can change the law. And this brings up a brilliant real-world application.
The rights of nature. This means legally recognizing that ecosystems, whether that's lakes, rivers, or forests, have a fundamental legal right to exist and thrive.
Wait, you mean like granting a corporation legal personhood?
Yes, exactly like that. When you grant legal personhood to a river, and the Uttarakhand High Court famously did this by recognizing the Ganga and Yamuna rivers as living entities, a guardian or a trust can literally sue polluters on the river's behalf. It is an administrative game changer that legally forces equilibrium.
Next up is the precautionary principle. To put it simply, this is the better safe than sorry rule for public policy. If a specific action or some brand new technology might cause severe environmental harm, the burden of proof totally falls on the people taking that action to prove it's actually safe. Skeptic.
So it basically stops reckless, blindly fast development right in its tracks.
Yes, for sure. And it guarantees equity, not just intra-generational equity, which is fairness among people living today, but intergenerational equity, meaning making sure we don't end up stealing a livable planet from our unborn grandchildren. But mentor, what about poverty? That's the elephant in the room. If we strictly limit our resource use, how do we uplift the poorest communities, especially in the developing world? That right there is the ultimate ethical friction point. And the answer lies in carefully balancing two concepts: Antyodaya and the minimalist ethic. Antyodaya means uplifting the weakest and most deprived among us. We absolutely, non-negotiably must allocate space and resources for the underprivileged to meet their basic survival needs. But to balance that equation, the affluent have to adopt a minimalist ethic. That's a massive cultural shift toward responsible consumption. The rich have to consume less, so the poor can just have enough.
All right, on to Section 4, Global Policies and Commons.
So how do we actually scale this? We need mitigation strategies that take these high-level ethics and translate them into massive, on-the-ground action. Here is the actionable structural overhaul we need across our development pillars. First off, developed nations, the ones who historically cause the most emissions, must accelerate and hit net zero by 2040. Second, the Global South shouldn't just follow that old, dirty industrial path. They need to leapfrog fossil fuels entirely, supported by massive tech transfers and climate finance.
Skeptic, and then you have something like the global carbon tax. That is quite literally taxing human greed right at the source of the pollution.
Precisely. It accelerates the market shift. And finally, we absolutely must actively restore the global commons. We're talking about our shared Earth systems, mangroves, peatlands, massive forests. They are literally the most efficient carbon capture technologies ever invented. Which actually ties perfectly into a massive, very concrete metric: 30 by 30. This is such an incredible goal for administrators to keep in mind. The target is to formally protect 30% of the world's land and oceans by the year 2030. It gives us a tangible, measurable target to ensure that equilibrium isn't just some vague buzzword, but a mapped-out geographical reality. Absolutely. And that perfectly sets up Section 5, Exploitation versus Ecological Equilibrium. Moving from exploit to equilibrium. I really want to synthesize this entire debate into a master matrix for you all. If you want a highly organized framework for your exam preparation, this is it.
Oh, wow, yeah, this is incredibly clean. A perfect summary for a quick revision session before the exam.
Let's walk through it side by side. To move from exploitation to equilibrium, our philosophy must shift from anthropocentrism, where man is above nature, to ecocentrism. Our strategy must pivot from mindless resource extraction to active resource regeneration.
And looking at motivation, we obviously have to move from short-term profit and greed right over to long-term survival and trusteeship. And finally, technology has to transition away from fossil fuels and high waste to green technology and zero-waste systems.
Exactly. Listen, if you can reproduce a variation of this exact table in your mains answer, you are instantly demonstrating to the examiner that you grasp the complete systemic nature of the solution. And speaking of the exam, let's wrap this up with Section 6, UPSC Mains Answer Strategy. It's time for a quick masterclass on translating this theoretical explainer into a seriously high-scoring 10-marker format. Here is your rapid 3-step deployment structure. Step 1. In your intro, acknowledge the prompt, but strategically reframe it. Define the core crisis. Remember, it's not development itself that is bad, but the extractive metrics like GDP that are fueled by short-term greed. Step 2, in the body of your answer, link the mitigation strategies directly to formal ethics. Step 3, conclude with a strong forward-looking vision of a regenerative structural overhaul.
I just want to highlight step 2 for a second, because here is how you actually grab those extra marks. Don't just list a bunch of environmental policies. Explicitly link them to ethical frameworks. For example, deontological ethics is all about duty and rules, right? So link that to respecting the rights of nature.
Spot on. Consequential ethics looks at outcomes, so you can link that directly to the minimalist approach to ensure the greatest good for the greatest number.
And virtue ethics focuses heavily on character. So argue that sustainability itself must become a core human virtue. Doing that is a massive, high-scoring value add for the examiner.
And for step 3, your conclusion. You always want to end on a really powerful, resonant note. So, a crucial point to make is this quote: "Ending the extinction trajectory is a crisis of will, not a technical impossibility. We must see ourselves as trustees of the planet, not the masters." The second we truly recognize our role as trustees, our economic development naturally aligns with the laws of ecology. All right, before we head out, we always like to look ahead. Based on today's source material, here is a provocative question from our Trend Extrapolator for you to really ponder for future exams. Can technology allow us to maintain our current lifestyles without destroying the planet? Or must a sustainable future require a total abandonment of modern luxury?
Man, that really is the billion-dollar question, isn't it? Does green tech actually save our current way of life? Or is the minimalist ethic literally the only way out?
It's definitely something to think deeply about as you continue your studies and your prep. Thank you so much for joining us on Ethical Point for this explainer. Keep learning, stay structured, and we will catch you next time.